Hello everyone, this is Tom Fox and I'm the Compliance Evangelist. I'd like to welcome you to my January 2018 podcast series of 31 Days to a More Effective Compliance Program. But first, a word about this month's sponsor, Conversant. Conversant brings a different kind of ethics and compliance solution to your organization. These days, business success demands something different, a corporate culture centered on integrity and ethical behavior. Conversant provides your teams with a centralized platform and automated processes that connect your business goals with your ethics and values. The result, a highly strategic program that drives ethics and values to the center of your business. Through the use of the Conversant Ethics Cloud platform, it gives you the choice of what you need according to your compliance program maturity. As your compliance program progresses on its ethical journey, Conversant can meet the needs of your requirements with unified ease of use and all of your ethics compliance data in one place, increasing transparency and efficiency while reducing cost. If you have been following me over the past year, you know that I have gone on a one-year exploration of various components of a best practices compliance program. However, during this exploration, there were two very important documents released by the Department of Justice relating to a best practices compliance program. In February 2017, there was the Evaluation of Corporate Compliance Programs document, and in November 2017, there was the announcement of the new FCPA Corporate Enforcement Policy. Therefore, in this month of January, I'm going to lay out for you what should go into your best practices compliance program based upon the 10 hallmarks of an effective compliance program and these two documents. Over the next 31 days, I will be exploring the best way to more fully operationalize a compliance program using the most recent DOJ resources. I hope you will join me for the full 31 days as we engage in an exploration to a more effective compliance program. 31 Days to a More Effective Compliance Program is a part of the Compliance Podcast Network. Day 9, 360 degrees of compliance communications. A 360-degree view of compliance is an effort to incorporate your compliance identity into a holistic approach so that compliance is in touch with and visible to your employees at all times. It is about creating a distinctive brand philosophy of compliance which is centered on your consumers. In other words, the customers of your compliance program, your employees, as it helps to anticipate all aspects of your employees' needs around compliance, especially when compliance is either perceived as something that comes out of the home office or perceived as Dr. No from the land of no. It gives you the opportunity to build a brand new image for your compliance program. Previously, I had thought of communication really as a two-way street, upward and downward, inbound and outbound, side to side. However, you might choose to phrase it, a 360-degree approach to compliance communication is something different. You simply can no longer effectively communicate in just two ways. You need to communicate in a more holistic manner and in multiple ways. If you are just thinking about communications in the classic form, you are missing something that is happening around you. 360 degrees of compliance communication is not just a classic form of communication, but rather it's communication in the concept that every interaction, whether it be a planned interaction or whether it be accidental interaction, it is all a form of communication. This is particularly true if you're a compliance professional, a chief compliance officer, or a compliance practitioner. The things you do, the way people see you, the way you act, are all forms of communication. It is not simply communicating to one another as often you may well be communicating to a group across siloed boundaries, to the constituencies you've not even planned to initially communicate with about compliance. Social media is a big part of the 360-degree view. Other issues include your role, facilitating your role as a leader through 360 degrees of compliance. Such a view allows you to inform your customer base, once again your employees, back up to your compliance program so that a feedback loop directs information into your compliance program going forward. There are several concepts which should be included in your 360-degree view of compliance communication. Begin with an objective so you identify the purpose of your communication and the target with whom you're going to communicate to. Identify as clearly as you can the purpose and reason to ensure your message is aligned with your objectives. For instance, are you implementing a 360-degree view of communication to educate, inform, change perceptions, or build trust and commitment? Next, who is your audience? To communicate effectively, you need to understand your audience. In any corporation, there are multiple audiences who are the key stakeholders in the 360-degree process. How much do they know? Some of the stakeholders may include the board of directors, senior management, middle management, employee teams, etc. But it can include things like, or groups like, sales agents, strategic alliances, and business venture partners. What are your distribution channels and how do you track your messaging? You should create a comprehensive spreadsheet to track messages to the intended audience and the delivery mechanism. Another key ingredient of the 360-degree approach is feedback. This is a key component and will allow you to educate each stakeholder on the benefits of not only your communication, but remember the looped feedback to you. Finally, you need to evaluate what you've done. You can monitor your communications by tracking attendance events, website stats, open emails, video hits. In other words, the same techniques your marketing folks would use to determine their messaging's effectiveness. The objective is to build trust with a 360-degree process by determining if your goal is achieved. You can utilize surveys or group focus to assess the impact of your target. Allowing such a 360-degree approach to compliance communication gives the CCO ability to see around the corners of your company and can be one of the greatest strengths of a best practices compliance program. Quite frankly, the reason is obvious. It's called listening. Listening is a key leadership component, and there are certainly many ways to listen. You can sit in your office and wait for the call or report on the hotline, or you can go out in the field and find out what challenges employees are facing about doing business compliantly and ethically. From this, you can work with them to craft a solution that works for the company and holds to the company's ethical and compliance values. The best example I can provide to you is a story told to me by Louis Sapperman, the Chief Compliance Officer at Dun & Bradstreet. It happened to him in Argentina. Argentina has an interesting form of illegal conduct, which is an open black market for the changing of currency. Sapperman was with a colleague who was one of the leaders of the company's South American operations, and they went into a convenience store. The person who was going to sell him the product suggested if he go around the corner and change money on the black market, he would get a much better rate, which was almost a 100% difference in the exchange rate. Sapperman declined to do so. Sapperman paid and received the established bank rate in the small transaction. Sapperman had not considered the role he had just gone through as modeling compliance or even the 360-degree view of communication. However, about 6 months later, one of his team members in Mexico was speaking to the leader of the Dun & Bradstreet operation there. The non-compliance function employee said that he was the person who had been with Sapperman. He recounted the story of doing the right thing literally when no one is watching. That indeed is the power of a 360 degrees in communication for compliance. So what are today's 3 key takeaways? Number 1, remember the definition of 360 degrees of compliance communication. It is an effort that includes the compliance identity into a holistic approach so compliance is in touch and viable to your employees at all times. 2, what is your objective? What are you trying to do with your 360 degrees of compliance communication, and how are you using that mechanism to deliver your objective the compliance program desires? And 3, evaluate. You need to evaluate the message that has been delivered to determine if it has been heard and if it is being implemented. This is Tom Fox. Thank you very much for listening to Day 9 of 31 Days to a More Effective Compliance Program. And I hope you'll join me tomorrow for Day 10, where we will take up the topic of use of social media to communicate in compliance. This is Tom Fox again. Thank you for listening to this episode of 31 Days to a More Effective Compliance Program, sponsored by Conversant. I hope you will join me tomorrow and indeed for the entire 31 days in January, while I will be exploring the best way to more fully operationalize your compliance program using the most recent resources the Department of Justice has communicated to us, the evaluation of corporate compliance programs, and the new FCPA corporate enforcement policy. This is Tom Fox. Thank you again for listening. 31 Days to a More Effective Compliance Program is a part of the Compliance Podcast Network.